Hey, this is Michael Lindsay, and we're here with the 2019 Husqvarna FC450 Rockstar Edition. I'm going to go ahead and break down the new changes to this bike, give you a little bit of tech brief on the motorcycle. If you're looking for my actual opinion riding it, hit the link below. Instead, we're going to spend the next few minutes just going over the changes so you can get to know everything that they did for this new year. This is actually the second year that we've had a Rockstar Edition Husqvarna. Last year, it kind of marked a new generation of bike. It had an new frame, updated swing arm, new cylinder head, exhaust system, suspension changes, just all overall bodywork. It was a new generation entry. So with that, it had the look of the team, but really the bonus of buying the bike was getting the new model 6 months early. Being that this is now kind of the current generation layout, what you're getting in the factory edition for 2019 is a lot more add-ons. Underlining all the little trinkets and looks of the bike are a few key changes. In the engine, they have switched back to a CP piston. They've been kind of bouncing around suppliers the last few years, and they went back to CP for a little bit uniformity change of the piston for a little bit better reliability. They've also added a copper bushing at the top of the rod where the piston pin goes through to relieve a little bit of friction. And then the finger followers at the top of the head have changed. They are a little bit lighter, which allows the engine to turn over technically easier because it's spinning less rotating mass, but also the finger followers are stiffer. This gives them a little more exact actuation, and at the same time it makes checking the valves a little bit easier because they flex a little bit less. Other than that, the engine is really unchanged. We have the same ECU mapping as the 2019 production bike. Any feelings or changes in the engine that will be felt is from that, and then along with the 4.1 FMF silencer they've added. The muffler for the Husky is a pretty big difference, considering that even in the US, the Husqvarna we buy has their worldwide spec muffler. It's a lot more choked down than some of the other models we see in the US from KTM and Husky because they use this silencer in every country. So jumping up to the FMF unit's a little bit more freed up, should help flow a little better at higher RPMs. Other than the typical graphics, seat cover, and team look, they've kind of updated and raised the value of the bike a little bit this year. One of the first things you'll see is a Power Parts catalog item from Husqvarna. It's their own triple clamp they sell. So other than the split look, the actual base of the lower triple clamp, there's a nut you can flip out and you can change the steering stem around so it goes from a 20mm offset to 22mm. Now the reason the clamps are split for a little bit different hold on the fork. A lot of people will make the mistake of over torquing their lower clamp, and when you do that, the upper tube actually gets crushed in a little bit. So when the lower tube tries to pass through it with the bushings, it binds up a little bit and it creates a little bit of a mid-stroke harshness that some riders can feel. By going to the split triple clamp design, it changes how the torque load is placed on the upper tube, so you can be a little bit more off. If you accidentally over tighten it past its 12 Nm spec by a little bit, it won't affect it as much. It doesn't put the same type of pressure on the upper tube, but also it even helps the fork in action. When you're actually riding, hitting bumps, under braking, the lower tube is flexing back a little bit from the upper tube. So when it goes to pass through the upper tube, it's at a bind. By going to these clamps, it helps relieve the pressure in that area and allows the fork to move a little bit freer even in action. Speaking of the fork and shock, you'll notice the exact labeling from WP on. This is not a technology change with the fork and shock. It's just a rebranding of their motocross product. So whether it's their kit level stuff, their factory level team, or production, you'll see the word exact on it. And on the side of the suspension, it actually breaks down what is in it. In this case, this is still the AER 48 air fork that we had from last year with some changes. The two most notable being a piston change and actually a little bit change on the shim that first actuates the compression stack. They've dimpled it, and the idea behind that is to get it to flex easier. The newer chassis seems to be a little bit more rigid up at the head stay and can make the fork feel a little bit dead. So by changing this shim, their goal is to try to break the initial crust of the suspension easier, get a little bit more initial plushness, and just make it feel like it moves through the first part of the stroke easier, because now that shim doesn't take as much pressure to flex and bend over for the oil to pass it, it kind of tapers and tweaks a little bit easier. Other than that, it has a little bit different wheel set than stock. It has DID rims with a Power Parts billet hub. The spoke cross pattern on the front is changed from a 2 cross to a 3. They're trying to change the pressure on the front wheel, make it a little bit more reliable and stronger, and overall just gives it a little bit more of that aftermarket look. And that's kind of the overall goal, of course, with this bike is, why would people spend the money on it? For a lot of people, they consider the extra expense of the bike to be a little bit ridiculous, but these bikes also sell out every year. There's people that definitely take in mind that to buy the muffler, the wheels, the clamps, the handlebars, and the overall just look of the bike, the composite skid plate, the floating front wave rotor, it would cost more to buy the production standard bike and go out and get all those items. For people that really go off the value and they know this is what they would add or similar parts is, it makes it cheaper for them. Also, number two, if you're not into the actual look of the bike, but you like hearing some of the changes that are coming with it, it's always easy to just wait a couple months. Typically what we see for changes on here are added to the next production bike, which will be the 2020 production model. Here in about probably 5 to 6 months they'll be available. So this is really just for the guys that kind of want that new earlier, want a few extra bling, and we're willing to spend the extra cash. For those of us that are maybe a little more on a budget or want a little more bang for our buck and don't worry about all these items, you can wait a few more months and get all the changes here, plus maybe a couple other things when the 2020 production bike comes around. Hey, want to stay in touch with the latest motocross and off-road bike tech and product launches, along with my thoughts and reviews on the bikes? Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It'll keep you in the loop because we'll be putting out plenty of content this year.